Welcome to the Badger Den, guys. We want to do a little bit lighter stuff today, but I always want to focus on the big news items. We're going to only touch a little bit on the riots, but for the most part, there's a lot of news going on. I did 2 streams yesterday, so we're going to try to get through a lot of the smaller stories that cropped up, given that such a big item hit over the past almost week now with the riots. So you guys already know about this regarding the bromances over between Muskadoodle and Trumpers. So, yeah, but let's focus on the bigger picture a little bit. So we all know about some of Musk's tweets where he was trying to call him out and say that he was part of the Epstein list and that was going on, and already said, like, who knows, but it doesn't make sense that he would be on it. And sure enough, several prominent people came out and said that it's completely BS, which doesn't look good for Elon. Elon then went back, deleted those, and then he started sending, a few heart emojis. He'll either repost or comment positively on posts from Trump and the team regarding the administration's actions controlling the riots in LA. Looking like, what can I do to try to do some mea culpas? He loves me not. He loves me. Again, Musk stating, I regret some of my posts about president last week. They went too far. Trump responding, I thought it was very nice that he did that. And then, of course, Musk continuing on with little heart emojis and retweeting, I think, Vance and Trump both. Trump was asked earlier on if he wanted to reconcile with Musk. President saying that he doesn't want to speak to Musk. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk to him anymore. He hurt my feels. Which is fair enough. Saying that you're on the Epstein list is pretty bad. Like, that's, again, you're basically calling somebody a PDFer, which is, in my opinion, one of the worst things you can call them besides a commie. Pretty bad. Anyway, after everything happened, I guess I could, but we have to straighten out the country first. And my sole function now is getting this country back to a level higher than it's ever been, and I think we can do that. At one point, he responded with a heart emoji to Trump wishing Musk very well. One of the things to really look at this is having somebody like Musk against you is not good, as we've seen what happened when Musk lost one of his sons to the whole psychosis regarding LGBT BS. It sent him over to the deep end. He did not care at that point. He got an idea in his head. Again, Musk has Asperger's, and he's a brilliant man. And so when he gets something in his head that he wants to focus on, he wants to stop the woke mind virus that destroyed one of his children. He was serious, and he put his money where his mouth is. He bought Twitter. He revamped Twitter, making Twitter, I don't want to say free speech, because we all know those that actually are on, what is it? It's not called Twitter, X now. It's not free speech. In fact, he actually hired somebody from Yahoo to actually manage it, and this woman, I'm not even going to mention her name because she's a POS, actively censors people. Like, she hates free speech. She doesn't like free speech. She doesn't believe in free speech, but Musk hired this woman. And what you've seen on X is, again, you do still have the shadow bans. You still have the throttling, but it's not as bad as what it once was under Dorsey, who is also a POS. It's better, but it's not great. But again, Musk is not a conservative. He's not, guys. Look at his life. He is not a conservative. He is somebody who is upset with what the left did to his family. You could argue that with Musk not being involved, he brought it on himself. Fine. Totally agree with that. The point is that Musk got something in his head. He was very angry about it, and he went after the woke as best as he could. He found an ally in Trump. Musk worked really hard on Doge. Musk threw about $250 million. I believe estimates are between $250 million and $333 million, help getting Trump elected. Trump knows this, but also with the debacle between the two, Musk understands that while he may be the richest man in the world, he is not the most powerful. That is Trump. So Musk, having settled down, is like, maybe I shouldn't upset Trump. Maybe I should pull back a little bit because he's got a lot of power? Yeah, Trump does. And what we should watch for is Musk going to hamstring conservatives in 2026 with the midterms? That's the real key. Because with Musk having so much money, he could easily back a bunch of other blue-haired radicals along with Soros, but I don't think Musk will do that. I think Musk understands once he's calmed down that the bigger picture is destroying the woke, which is what has destroyed one of his children. Probably more than one, but again, he likes to keep things a little closed off, and fair enough. So just be aware of that. This is great that we're seeing some sort of reconciliation, because you don't want Musk for an enemy, because once he gets a hold of something, he is going to focus in on it. And let's make sure that, or hope Musk makes sure that his number one focus should be destroying the woke. Told you about this, but we still have a long way to go. There were only two ways, and this is mainly, again, pointing out that maybe this was happening in the background, and now Musk feels that maybe all the efforts in Doge were not wasted, but only time will tell. The two options are, one, getting the changes in Doge codified into law. That did not happen in the Big Beautiful Bill. Big Beautiful Bill. Maybe it'll happen next year. I'm not sure. I've got my doubts. But this is the other option, rescission package. So what this is essentially line item veto by the Senate to basically say, okay, we're going to strip this out. We're going to strip this out. We're going to strip this out. So that's what is happening, and this is fantastic. There's advancing a package of a $9.4 billion in rescissions requested by President Trump, setting up a floor vote on the issue this week. This will go through. It's already passed committee on a line item vote. This was funding that was going to go to USAID. That's right. Even though they've identified all this waste in USAID and they've shut down the building to USAID, all that money's still sitting there. And that's what Musk had the problem with. It's like, okay, you still approved all this money, so it's just floating there. Let's trim the fat and make sure it doesn't get spent. Because if you're just letting it sit there, somebody's going to find a way to grab it. It's better to take it out of the pockets of these bureaucrats and put it back in the people. So let's look at the bulk of the proposed cuts. $8.3 billion come out of USAID, deemed by the administration to be wasteful and not aligned with U.S. national interests. Yeah. $1.1 billion is coming from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is essentially NPR and PBS. Initially, if this was 30 to 40 years ago, I would say that's very sad. But we all know that PBS and NPR pretty much are parroting anything from the Democrats. And NPR is actually suing based upon free speech. The problem is, if you look at NPR, they are a mouthpiece of the left. If you're a government-funded agency, you cannot be partisan. NPR and PBS are clearly partisan. You don't believe me on PBS? Go watch the latest episodes of Sesame Street where they're promoting LGBT. You can't do that and call yourself nonpartisan. Some of the stuff in here, before that, want to look at what Virginia Fox said. Oh, Fox. Anyway, a lot to get in with her. She's another great example. She's got a fantastic record. The problem is you have a system that needs term limits, and she's gotten really old. Fox stated this is a textbook way under the Impoundment Control Act, which circumscribes the president's ability to withdraw federal funds without congressional approval. What are you talking about? This is the whole point of rescission, is that it goes through Congress to trim out the fat. What are you talking about? It's how Trump basically saying, hey, take this line item. You guys, can you cut it out? It still requires congressional approval. Term limits would be great. Fox has had a wonderful career. I don't want to knock Fox. But what are you talking about? One of the things from the cuts, $2.2 million in cuts would affect programs intended to promote LGBT programs in the Caribbean, Western Balkans, Uganda, and everywhere else in between. Sounds like a good cut. $5 million for green transport, $500,000 for electrical buses in Rwanda, $6 million for net zero cities in Mexico, $2.5 million to teach young children how to make environmentally friendly reproductive health decisions, aka destroy the birth rate, destroy just any semblance of the nuclear family. Demonic. 614,000 for climate adaptation, such as growing coral reefs in the Caribbean. I mean, out of all that, that's like the least offensive, but my goodness. Also included $1 million for voter ID in Haiti. So again, voter ID in Haiti, okay. Voter ID here is racist. Make it make sense, liberal. Make it make sense. You can't. Drop the act. $4 million for legume system research. $3 million for Iraqi Sesame Street, probably promoting LGBTQ in Iraq. What do you think they do to LGBTQers in Iraq? Awful Roof says what? $4 million for sedentary migrants? Hey, sedentary migrants, you need to get up and get across the border. $6 million for supporting the media organizations and civic life of Palestinians. What in the world? And $1.2 million for the Afrobarometer Public Opinion Survey. Just shut up and go away. All right, so now that we got some fun news out of the way, I want to look at this. This is way more serious, and I don't think enough people are paying attention. So we've got two serious conflicts going on right now. A hot war, essentially, proxy war, borderline hot war happening in Ukraine. And now potentially something that is bubbling out and out of the frying pan into the fire regarding Iran. So the State Department has immediately ordered the departure of all non-essential personnel from Baghdad and authorized a voluntary departure from Bahrain and Kuwait. Not a good sign. Why is that? The Iranian Defense Minister, General Aziz Nasserzadeh, told members of the press on Wednesday that he hopes talks with the U.S. are productive, but that his country would be ready to respond in the case of a conflict. Quoting, "If conflict is imposed upon us, the opponent's casualties will certainly be more than ours, and in that case, America must leave the region because all its bases are within our reach. We have access to them. We will target all of them in the host countries without hesitation." Making it very clear for some reason, if a conflict is imposed upon us, what could that mean? We're going to get into it. A statement was issued by the Middle East-based United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations. So this is like a agency that kind of helps shipping and says, hey, we're kind of looking out for you guys and warn you generally of Somali pirates. But guess what? It has been made aware of increased tensions within the region, which could lead to an escalation of military activity having a direct impact on mariners. Again, when you are attacking ships, you don't always pay attention to the flags they're flying and identify them before you shoot at them. So warning ships in the region to be very aware and careful of what is happening. But why is this happening? This is why. Potential Israeli strike on Iran per Washington Post. The Washington Post, conduit for this deep state, if you're not familiar with the Washington Post and other media outlets, look up Operation Mockingbird, essentially where the government is controlling and pushing a narrative through our narrative propaganda through news outlets. The United States is on high alert in anticipation of a potential Israeli strike on Iran, with State Department authorizing the evacuation of some personnel in Iraq and the Pentagon greenlighting the departure of military family members across the Middle East. Trump specifically saying, "I am less confident now than I would have been a couple months ago. Something happened to them, but I am less confident of a deal being made." U.S. intelligence officials have grown increasingly concerned that Israel may choose to strike Iran's nuclear facilities without consent of the U.S. Such a move would almost certainly scuttle the Trump administration's delicate nuclear negotiations and prompt Iranian retaliation on U.S. assets in the region. Why is this happening? Let's look at a couple things. So there's a few items that are bubbling under the surface that this article is not really revealing. The IDF have elevated their operational readiness. So Israel is really getting ready. In response, the U.S. sees that and has mirrored this posture, anticipating potential Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Senior diplomat speaking to the Washington Post stated, "We think it's more serious than any other time in the past." These, again, diplomats have been there for not a few years. They don't generally get cycled through per administration they can, but normally they like to keep an ongoing face, which helps with their relationships and whatnot with people in the region, meaning that this senior diplomat has probably been there for quite a while. The U.S. State Department has directed all embassies within Iranian strike range, including several in Europe, to immediately convey emergency action committees and transmit updated risk assessments to Washington. In other words, tell us what it would take for you to get out. What kind of personnel do you have? What would happen if we sent you a note saying that an Iranian missile strike is imminent? Would you guys be safe? Where would you go to? What are potential casualties? What are the impacts? The Trump imposed deadline on Iranian nuclear negotiations expires today, June 12th. So Trump wanted a deal today. U.S. officials speaking to Axios now assess it as increasingly unlikely the sixth round of talks in Oman will proceed as scheduled on Sunday. Trump wanted some sort of agreement today to finalize everything this coming Sunday. What is happening? General Kurilla, commander of the U.S. Central Command, has postponed his scheduled testimony before Congress due to mounting tensions across the Middle East. So let's get into the two bubbling pieces. So Trump, again, he does not want a war. He has expressed his preference for negotiated solutions, but Iran insists that it must be able to keep enriching uranium at least low levels as a matter of national sovereignty. However, Iran and the U.S. are tentatively scheduled to hold 6 talks, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. They seem to be delaying, and I think that's a shame, Trump said. He has frequently said that Iran would never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon and threatened military action if an agreement is not reached. So again, Trump imposed the deadline. You must agree to some of these terms by today. Iran says, well, we're probably not going to do that. And who do you think is going to retaliate? If Israel sees that Iran is not going to come to the table and start agreeing to stop enriching uranium, then they'll just be like, fine, we'll just take out their enrichment facilities and be done with it, which, again, would start a conflict, which is not great. So looking like a lot of tension right now. In a post on next Wednesday, Agarici said that Trump's demand that Iran not develop a nuclear weapon is actually in line with their own doctrine and could become the main foundation for a deal. It's clear that an agreement can ensure the continued peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program is within reach and could be achieved rapidly. Although Witkoff indicated early in the negotiations that some compromise could be reached, allowing Iran to continue to produce small quantity of low-level enriched uranium for civil purposes, the administration has since rejected that possibility. Why? That's because Iran has dramatically increased the amount of near weapons-grade material it possesses. Because what Iran does is they build up their enriched materials as close as they can to be just within that threshold, and if they need them, they quickly finish their enrichment process, and now they've got enough fissile material to produce a nuclear warhead. And that's what they've done. They've got a stockpile of it. They're ready to go. They're just under that threshold, thanks to essentially Biden and Obama. And now Israel's nervous. Why is Israel nervous? Because it's one thing for somebody like China or Russia to have a nuclear warhead, and you have MAD, mutual assured destruction. Iran don't care. Iran wants a nuclear warhead to use it. They don't want a nuclear warhead to sit on it and say, everybody leave me alone, like Pakistan and India are doing. However, that conflict has also been bubbling up and people have been ignoring it. When you have a group of people who pretty much want the destruction of a country, and I am not an Israeli apologist, I don't want America involved. However, I clearly see that if you have a group of people that say, hey, we would like to see Israel wiped off the face of the map, and they're trying to build a nuclear warhead to do that, it kind of would make Israel terrified. And unfortunately, that puts them in the position to where if they do not see a deal coming around the corner, they will act unilaterally. Reza Nahifi charged the Europeans with violating a decade-old agreement which technically still remains in effect, claiming they failed to lift all of their own sanctions when the original deal was struck. What he's leaving out is that Iran violated the deal first by continuing to enrich uranium. So you violated the deal first, so Europe's not going to lower sanctions. It's kind of like what Biden should have done, but he didn't. Iran started enriching uranium, and he was like, meh. Of the IAEA, I believe that's International Atomic Energy Association or something. Yeah, there it is right there. International Atomic Energy Agency. Governors proceed with a plan to vote on a resolution against Iran at the end of their week-long meeting on Friday. Agarici said Iran will react strongly. Blame will lie solely and fully with malign actors who shatter their own relevance. Again, Iran is pretty much turning up the temperature. This is not good. Israel is basically showing people that they are, or us, they are willing to act unilaterally, and a deadline that Trump has imposed is being breached as of today. So unless something happens today, hopefully Israel can keep their weapons in their pants for a little while longer. Hopefully Iran cools things down a little bit, but this is not looking great. Like there isn't enough going on in the world. So let's give some levity, shall we? Case study in whoop ass. Hegseth, man. What the Biden administration has shown is that they like to employ DEI derelicts that have absolutely no common sense and really cannot string two sentences together. Trump has shown that he likes to employ very intelligent people who don't follow and toe the deep state line of get in line, do what we say to do, and allow this money to just be wasted. So Hegseth just completely turned the tables on these bureaucrats and showed them for what they are, a bunch of idiots. Hegseth was supposed to do a standard talk with them, query, where they're basically asking what his budget is, what sort of finances he's looking to utilize throughout the year, and of course, with the military being ready to be potentially any minute now, any day now, any hour now, deployed into LA, pure the Insurrection Act, they immediately sprung upon that. Instead of focusing on the finances, they immediately turned it into an attack on the Trump agency, Hegseth, and the military. So Betty McCollum opened fire, skipping over the budget's big picture and going straight for Hegseth's decision to deploy troops to LA in response to widespread violent riots. Where is your limited budget, sir? In the remainder of this fiscal year, are you going to pull the money to cover these deployments? Hegseth, of course, responding very well. Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. You are right. We are both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well. When Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground, and also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis, the police precinct, ma'am, was abandoned and burned to the ground, and because of that, the National Guard was eventually far too late to be mobilized. So again, he's pointing out a case study of cowardice, pointing out that Walz, who could have been potentially the incompetent, inept VP, would allow this to just continue. He would allow LA to just continue to burn and be destroyed. President Trump recognizes a situation like that, and properly handled by a governor like it was by Governor Walz, if it gets out of control, is a bad situation for the citizens of any location. So in LA, we believe that ICE, which is a federal law enforcement agency, has the right to safely conduct operations in any state, any jurisdiction in the country, especially after 21 million illegals have crossed our border under the previous administration. Notice he's pointing out 21 million. That goes to a previous stream where I called that out, where we've only had 13 million actual interactions with ICE agents, CBP, where illegals are coming across the border, and that it's much higher than that. He is pointing to it that it's generally double the codified rate of 10 to 13 have come across. It's more realistically 20, and we already had about 20 in here, so there's about a 40 million or 1 in 10 illegals in the country right now, which is insane. After getting, slapped in the face, Representative McCollum wasn't done. After hearing Hegseth's defense of the LA deployment, she returned to the mic, visibly agitated, and with 17,000 officers on the ground, she argued the city did not need federal backup. There are 17,000 LAPD, you mentioned that. There would be 18,000 if not for the defund the police movement that folks like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have implemented. The police chief said she was overwhelmed, so we helped. So even the police chief has come out and said, what happened to the fire chief? Oh, yeah, that's right. Karen Bass fired her after she was a DEI hire, the police chief. And even that DEI hire police chief come out and said that Karen Bass forced her under these environmental regulations to decommission multiple fire trucks and also not continue to refill the cisterns that would be used to fight fires. Good job, Karen Bass. Good job, DEI electorals. Good job, guys. And again, you people that are fleeing California, you're fleeing to red areas and you're going to vote in these same awful policies and cause more destruction that you left. Stop the cycle. Break the cycle. McCollum was a total hissy fit then after that response. Mr. Chairman, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer my budgetary questions I put before him. They are important. What training and missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from and how are you planning this moving forward? So she cares about money now. They wasted so much money. Now she cares about money. No, she doesn't. But Hegseth responded greatly. Look at this fantastic response. Well, thankfully, unlike the previous administration, we've received a 13% increase in our defense budget, and we will have the capability to cover down our own contingencies, which is something the National Guard and the Marine plan for. So we have funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in major American city. Boom! It gets better, guys. So notice that he pointed out specifically the failed California protection of the citizens and the prevention of federal law being implemented. So Representative Pete Aguilar, a Democrat from California, accused Hegseth of sending troops to LA without proper supplies. I'm from a military family, when you send the Marines and Rangers, they go in quick. And they don't care what they have on their back. They take all their supplies on their back. Food, water, necessities, and they get there. And the goal is to get there within 24 hours and being set up, ready to go. What follows behind them are supplies and logistics. The military is a fantastic logistical supplier that would make other businesses green with envy when they are rolling out with these abilities like setting up food, setting up cook camps, latrines even, getting fuel. It's just phenomenal what the logistic capabilities of the military are, and they're really good at it. But the first line is to get the men out there to the front line immediately, and that's what happens. They go with what's on their back. Just some context there. Hegseth, the veteran, responds with the soldier sleeping on the floor that Aguilar claimed with no food and no water and no fuel. The commanders and troops on the field are very well prepared. Again, they carry everything on their back. They responded rapidly to a deteriorating situation with equipment and capabilities. I know what it's like to be immediately deployed into a situation like that. Sometimes you make do for a moment. We are ensuring they're housed, fed, and supplied in real time from my office because I care that much about California Guard, the Marines, and the men and women protecting the ICE agents. That's a disingenuous attack and it misrepresents how much we care for our troops. Hegseth is a good man. He cares. He's done there. He's been in there with the blood and tears. This is disgusting, this kind of attack from Aguilar. Aguilar then got scared and he realized he was well in overhead because he forgot Hegseth isn't a bureaucrat. So then he says, why are you sending warfighters to interact with civilians? Hegseth then responds, every citizen deserves to live in a community that's safe. ICE agents need to be able to do their job when they're attacking for doing it. That's lawlessness. Again, with Aguilar firing back, what federal law are you talking about? Which one are you specifically claiming here? And Hegseth, without missing a beat, claims all three. Millions of illegals flying foreign flags in the streets, assault on law enforcement, and a governor who refuses to act just to protect the people. There it is. The governor of California has failed to protect his people. The mayor of LA won't enforce the law, so President Trump will. Again, any one of those three are significant and will allow the Insurrection Act to be implemented and troops to be sent. Here, Hegseth cites all three. To my point, I call out at least two of them. I'm not familiar enough in the military to call it a third. I'll trust Hegseth on that, where you essentially have foreign flags in the streets. So you have a foreign occupied force. You have the president of Mexico, the president of the Mexican Senate, both calling these people Mexicans, not Americans, Mexicans. You have lawlessness, where essentially federal law is not being implemented and you are not enforcing the law. You have citizen civil rights being trampled upon. You've got all three per Hegseth. You and I both know that President Trump has all the authorities necessary, and thankfully he's willing to use them. Hegseth silenced Aguilar with a clear message: the end of lawlessness is over. That was Biden. This isn't going to be Trump. Fantastic. Later on, Durbin comes in and he takes a different tact. So he's pointing out that Hegseth has trimmed a huge chunk of the medical research budget under the current Defense Secretary Hegseth's plan for the military. Durbin bragged that he dramatically increased the medical research to protect the men and women in uniform. It is enough for me that they risk their lives for our country. We shouldn't try to make it a more dangerous situation, and we ought to understand what's going on in their minds and their bodies who serve. So he's trying to demean Hegseth, saying that you are putting our troops at risk. This is completely immoral and disgusting. He then turned to Hegseth, complaining that millions of dollars in research projects have been canceled since he became Defense Sec. Your budget cuts two-thirds of that amount for defense health research. How can that be consistent with our mutual goal of making the military life a safer life for our men and women in uniform? Senator, I would take issue with your characterization of all two-thirds of that. Whatever was reduced is focused on the issues that you just spoke about, Hegseth replied. Notice two-thirds were cut. What were in those two-thirds? Again, these were not Doge cuts. This is what the budget that has already been approved, that has been being spent by our military, this waste. Two-thirds. My team knows that's exactly the type of research that we would find, but we did find lots of other research inside the Defense Department to tens of millions, and in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars that was a boondoggle for the American people. Durbin, getting ready to stick his foot in his mouth, give me an example of a boondoggle. Let's see. We're talking about some stuff I shouldn't say in public. You know, marbles in the rear end of cats. Tens of millions of dollars, things that don't have. Hegseth was going to continue, but Durbin immediately seeing that, oh wow, Hegseth has done his research. He's not some bureaucrat. He actually knows what he's talking about on these line items. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Durbin, clearly wishing he could withdraw the question, attempted to deflect. It is like the 350-year-old Social Security check that the president told us about. Oh, Durbin, you're backpedaling and you're trying to point out where Doge was saying there's a lot of fraud going on in Social Security, where hundreds of thousands of people, I think it was tens of thousands of people, were over the age of 120 and getting Social Security. Not a good look. And then, of course, being gracious, Hegseth helps Durbin out. Senator, I respect completely the issue that you're speaking with. The Defense Department has been a place where organizations, entities, and companies know they can get money almost unchecked, whether or not it actually applies to things that happen on the battlefield. That's what we work very hard to find ways that that other secretaries have not. Lloyd says what? This committee and others talk about waste, fraud, and abuse all the time. We have actually gone after waste, fraud, and abuse because every dollar that is spent is another dollar we can pour into war fighters. Fantastic. Come on, liberal. Don't you love this? This is beautiful. This is beautiful. Signing off, guys. Thank you for hanging out with me. Dig you later.